12 o'clock and we are going to get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Stacy Owen. I'm the Executive Director of Alumni Engagement for the School of Business. Welcome to our virtual panel, Women Leading the Way, Creating Results, Balance, and Inclusion for All. We were thrilled to see so much interest in this topic and appreciate our panelists for all that they are going to share with us today. This session is being recorded. We will share the recording afterwards. I'd like to introduce Norma Montague, who is our moderator today. She's the Senior Associate Dean of Academic Programs at the School of Business. Norma, we appreciate your time, and we'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Stacy, and it's wonderful to see everybody. I see many familiar names, so happy that you're able to join us. And if this is your first time, welcome. I think you'll find it to be a very wonderful session. So I'd like to begin by introducing our speakers, and I have their bios and they're so accomplished. I'm going to give an abbreviated version as an introduction, and then of course I invite them to bring in their experiences as we start our discussion. So first we have Ashley Colris. Ashley is the Chief Operations Officer at a legacy federal credit union and currently has accountability for retail operations, which includes 13 financial centers, 8 student-run credit union locations, a call center, private banking, deposit operations, project management, strategic planning, and member and community development. She has held previous roles in resources, learning and development, organizational development, and marketing, legal, and compliance. She has also served on the board of numerous organizations. She holds an undergraduate degree in speech communications from East Tennessee University and her master's degree in leadership and organizational change from Piper University. She also holds several professional certifications, and that indeed is the brief version. She's a very accomplished leader, so thank you. Second, we have Diana Medina. Diana is VP of Retail Transformation at Enmar. She leads a team of experts that support Enmar's retail partners and help them grow their digital initiatives. Prior to joining Enmar, Diana was Director of E-commerce Merchandising at Lowe's Foods. She is highly involved in coaching and mentorship for young professionals and enjoys helping other women develop skills to integrate family, career, and personal interests in a purposeful way. She holds an MBA from Wake Forest University, go Deeks, a bachelor's degree in business administration, and a bachelor's degree in communication from La Sabana University in her hometown of Bogota, Colombia. Welcome, Diana. And next we have Eva Newman, who is a native of Washington, D.C., recently retired as founder and president of ENC Strategy, which for 28 years provided strategic communication services to emerging growth and large business clients, including, and again, this is a long list, so I'm gonna pick a few: Booz Allen Hamilton, Dell EMC, Cisco, NetApp, and Hewlett Packard. ENC was recognized by Working Mother Magazine, the Washington Business Journal, and CARE Awards as an outstanding employer. The team received over 50 awards for outstanding work, and Eva was recognized as an outstanding business leader by the Washington Business Journal, Federal Computer Week, and Women in Technology. She also serves as a board member of several companies and was past president of Women in Technology. So thank you, Eva. It's great to have each of you, and we're just going to roll right into a series of questions. So first, I would like for each of you to describe your leadership style and how you lead others. And if you think about it also, is it different from your male counterparts? So let's start with Ashley.
Hey, thank you, Norma, and good afternoon to everyone. Such a privilege to be here and pleasure to speak with all of you and learn from each of you as well. So thank you. To answer the question around leadership style, I really want to step back to share I've worked at a legacy for 20 years, so much of my growth and development as a leader has come from how our organization behaves and our culture here at a legacy. We focus organizationally on behavioral attributes and leader competencies for all. So we uphold all employees, no matter if they're an individual contributor or a leader, to the behaviors of care, collaborate, serve, and grow, And then leaders, we take to the next level of expectations to ensure that we have courageous leadership, decision-making, communication skills, talent development, and that we're ultimately culture and brand ambassadors for who we are. So with this has really formed how I operate and how I have led the teams and my teams. I have a behavior and character focus for myself, for all the folks that I work with and have the chance and privilege to work with every day. So we often talk about not what we do, but how we do it. So as a leader, it's, ultimately being a good human and most importantly, making sure you remember how you make people feel, because how that feeling is what they go and walk away with. So the behaviors and character leadership skills that we put in place is really what inspires me on my skills to be a lifelong learner. We'll fail forward together. We have a lot of transparency and candor with how we operate, ultimately looking at things with positivity and a positive outlook and optimism where we need to, and then striving as a team for excellence. So pushing myself to be my best as well as my teammates.
Great, thank you. Diana?
Thank you. I love this question because when you reflect about your leadership style, it's good to go back in your story and see how your own style has changed and how it has been transformed. And I think it's always influenced by the great leaders that we followed, as well as some of those other leaders that we may disagree with, or we may not like the approach that they take. So I think mine is continuing to evolve based on those experiences. And I think of three key areas that I currently am focusing on these three areas to improve my leadership. The first one is the part of setting the vision, right? And sometimes it's hard to put that in more concrete words or facts or definitions for your team to follow. So really investing a lot as an organization at Inmar in making sure that we're very clear on the targets that we're trying to hit. I think many times people get lost in the process because they don't know what's expected of them. So that vision setting and that being very, very clear on what we expect from the team is crucial. The second piece is about empowerment, also very much inspired by what's happening in our organization today. It's about asking the right questions and enabling the team to come to their own answers, especially when we're earlier in our, in our leadership journey. We tend to jump right in and help solve issues and tell them what to do, and really learning to take a step back and ask the right question and provide the room for the individual to come up with those answers and those solutions. That's where empowerment comes from. So I am very focused on that piece. And then the third piece, which is extremely important to me, is this element of inspiration and representation. I really believe that showing others that someone like them can reach higher roles in the organization is so motivating and so inspiring. And that's part of the role that I play as a woman, as a Hispanic, is showing others that this is possible and that there's a way to get to those higher levels in leadership, no matter who you are or where you come from. So that representation and inspiration is also something that I try to infuse in my leadership every time that I have an option to do it. So that's a little bit of my style.
Thank you, Diana. And Eva?
Okay, sorry about that. It's so interesting to hear the other comments, and I agree with everything that was just said. I'll give you a little bit of the background of how I developed my leadership style. I would say that I had worked before I started my company, I had worked with different kinds of leaders as managers or as peers. And I worked with very authoritarian leaders, and I worked with people who were ineffective leaders. And I worked in organizations that had zero teamwork. And then I worked with my own departments where we had tremendous teamwork. So when I started the company, I wanted to start a company where people could have more of a flexible schedule. Back in the day, you had to be at work at 8 o'clock sharp, and you didn't leave until 5:30 sharp. And I wanted to create something that was more flexible, and primarily for women, but for men as well. And so I started the company working with a few full-time people, but I had a flexible schedule for them. And it was more of a flexible schedule where if you had to go to teach a class or be a guest speaker at your child's 11-year-old child's class, and you were teaching a half-hour session on George Washington, you could run out and do that and then come back to work and creating that, or take a child to a doctor's appointment. And it was the faith in people that they weren't going to not do their work. It was more being held accountable for what you do. And especially in our field of work, there are constant deadlines. So you either get it done or you're ineffective. So starting the company that way really was a values-based organization before that was even a term. And then fast forward 5 or 6 years into the company's growth, I wanted to be able to evaluate people on how they were contributing to the organization and contributing value to the organization other than completing just a task. So the company collaboratively, we developed a evaluation system for our employees where they were evaluated on the company values. And we came up with the company values together where people said what the company meant to them and why we were different from other companies and why we were special. And we came up with about 9 values. And I'll just scroll back a little bit. In the past, I'd always had to do an annual review, and it was so horrible. And it was always based on skills, very little based on attitude or habits, things like coming to work late or being thorough in their work. So we tied I worked with an HR consultant and developed a program where the reviews were based on our values. And it was very easy to say that if somebody didn't complete their work on time, they were not contributing to the value of teamwork. And evaluating the same outcomes, but doing it in a different way that was much more personal and more meaningful to make our company work consistently and work together as a team. One other thing I'll mention is that when I started investing in this was probably 20 years ago, I had some men, CEO advisors, very well thought of, and I explained what I was doing to them. And they said, why are you doing that? That's a lot of expense. And I said, because it really works to show the type of people that we want to onboard and have part of our company. And it just went to show the difference in thought on the leadership of how our organization was different from other organizations. Hope that helped.
Yes, very much so. So each of you have spoken a bit about your leadership style. Today, I'd like to take you back, look back a little bit further and share with us what motivated you to step up to be a leader. Was it something that just happened through a natural progression in a role, or is it something that you had set out to do intentionally? And so this time we'll start with Diana.
Thank you. I loved, reflecting on this question as well, because again, when you think about how you thought of leadership or your career advancement when you were earlier in your career, it was definitely different from how I see it today. And I was always very clear on the fact that I wanted to continue to grow and reach higher levels. But I remember a conversation that I had with a very, very good mentor and friend of mine, which I always talk about him in these sessions, Tim Lowe from Lowe's Foods. He has been so inspiring and so important in my development as a leader. And I remember having a conversation with him about the next step in my career. And he asked me the question, like, why do you want to get to the next level? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? And I said all these things about, impacting more people, or, I couldn't really figure out what the essence of what I wanted to do was. And I asked the same question to him. I said, why are you a leader? Did you always know that you were going to be president? Like, how did you go about that process? And he said, at some point in my career, I learned that my purpose as a leader was to impact other leaders so that they could impact other people. And that was so simple. And he said, at that point, it didn't matter if I was the president or if I was a store manager or if I was a department manager. And it didn't matter if I had 2 people or 5 people or 100 people, because the purpose is the same. And all of those conversations started to show me what I wanted to do as a leader. And for me, it is so incredibly important to continue to grow as an individual, right? That growth element, learning, that passion for learning, and, you know, getting to that next level of stretching yourself. So individually, that is my motivation, is being able to continuously learn and explore things that feel uncomfortable. So when I start getting too comfortable with something, I say, okay, it's time to go to the next level. And that has become my motivation in leading other people as well, right? If I can play a part in helping that individual discover a new skill or discover a new way of doing something, or getting to the next job, that is extremely rewarding as a leader when you see one of your individuals being able to get to the next level and explore something new in their career. So that growth element, and that is inspiring others to be their best version, I think has become more of my purpose. And I'm sure that purpose will continue to evolve, and I really hope it does. But it's very much about the impact and the ability to learn, and a lot less about the title or the number of people that you have under you in the organization. And that keeps you kind of focused on the right things, in my opinion. So.
Thank you. And before we go to Eva, Diana, please forgive me for the mix-up on your name.
Oh, no
I wanted
worries.
to share, I have a childhood friend whose name is Medina, so it was top of mind for me.
It actually happens often, so no worries at all.
Thank you. Eva.
I think there's been a constant trend through my career, through my life, being a change agent. So I naturally go towards making change, stepping up, looking for new opportunities to create efficiency, and then getting a group, you know, gathering the team around me to make the change. I love working with teams. I love solving problems. So I'm not the type of person that would just sit and let something not work. I've got to go out and try and fix it. And I think the other thing would be a leadership vacuum. And I was saying before, I've worked with different types of peers and managers, and I just personally get frustrated when something's not being operated or led effectively. So I just step in a very graceful way and try and affect change and take the lead. And it's not so much as being in charge and leading. It could also be helping, I'll just say, a manager above me, helping them understand what needs to occur and what needs to happen. So it could also be leading behind the scenes and making somebody else successful. It's not so much a need of having myself be the one in charge. It can also be leading for a purpose to help someone else be successful. And that could be an employee as well.
Thank you. And Ashley,
Yes,
again,
thank
what
you.
motivated you to step up?
So looking back again, 20 years ago, what brought me to a legacy and to join as a manager, so I walked in as a leadership opportunity, was really our CEO at the time, a male CEO who'd been the credit union for a very long time. And when he shared the legacy story, he shared the cultural alignment of what a legacy was looking to do and how we're looking to help others. The inspiration he brought to the table and the support and the vision he had for the role in which we could serve our community and our members, it really allowed me to embrace that alignment to history I'd had in previous leadership roles and management roles, but to do it in a way where it was purpose-driven, really aligning more on that calling level of impact to positively impact lives outside of just maybe the job in which we were serving. And so I've taken that inspiration to step up as a leader to align those positive impacts, really embracing and accepting the leadership opportunities that have been presented to me I've had the privilege through the support of the 2 CEOs that I've had, and now 3 as of a couple weeks ago, to have male and female CEOs here who have given us opportunities for new challenges, some of which we're familiar with and some we're not, but embracing those and seeing that as a leader as a way to, again, align that belief of helping others, positively impacting lives, welcoming those challenges. But while I'm in the role I'm in, whatever it is, staying very grounded in that role and being the best that I could be in the role that I am, serving the best way I could serve the people I had the privilege to work with, the members I have the privilege to serve, the communities that we have the privilege to work with, and staying very grounded to just ensuring that as a leader, we're staying focused on those inspirations and support. Hoping my strengths align to where the organizational strategy is going to provide that support. At the end of the day, making sure I'm again, aspiring to positively impact lives really is what makes you align to want to be a leader.
Yeah, so that was definitely a common theme amongst the comments we've heard. And so each of you have shared the importance of helping others and inspiring others, supporting and positively impacting others. How can we calculate or measure the positive impacts of your leadership and or having women in the organization? So Ashley, if you don't mind, you can just pick up from where you left off.
Sure. There's a lot of research around this one, of course, right? In terms of the studies that show where women bring to the table a lot of emotional intelligence. And so that combination of their EQ and their IQ coming together, and what it does for impacts organizations is the impact it can have to productivity when you have that emotional intelligence. The opportunity to enhance collaboration because you recognize the power of the teamwork, to inspire the organizational dedication, and a lot of things that women can bring to the table is around to improving fairness. And that just comes from the studies around the way in which we think, we see the power of the emotional intelligence, but it also comes with us working on that emotional intelligence where we're managing our emotions, where we're picking up the emotions of others around us, and ultimately building the trust to grow influence to help as leaders.
Thank you. And Eva?
I would completely agree. And those studies show through productivity, through change in revenue, that employee retention, that an organization is more effective when it has a diverse set of leaders. I think the other thing is productivity and measuring productivity. Another thing, creativity in thinking and problem solving, coming up with different solutions. I think men and women come at things differently, and that all leads to the increase in productivity, revenue, creativity, innovation.
Thank you. And Diana?
Well, this is an important one for us at Inmar. We are a data company, so we're looking at data every day, and we take that approach also in looking at our organization effectiveness. So one of the key themes that we've been discussing when it comes to empowering women in the workplace is ensuring that we are measuring performance and measuring outcomes, right? If women, or if us as an organization, if we're looking to empower women and if we don't pay attention to the business outcomes that we're trying to drive, then we're really not linking the development of women with the development and the growth of the organization. So those two things need to be extremely connected. And there's all sorts of ways of measuring the impact that women can have by just looking at what their teams are accomplishing, right? So that business accomplishment element is critical. But then we also look at things as, promotions. How many leaders are we promoting who happen to be women or, from other diverse groups? So promotions, retention, how much are we retaining our female or women leaders in the organization? So looking at all of those metrics and understanding what we're doing as an organization to help them grow and what impact are they having as leaders in helping other people grow, regardless of their background, right? So we're getting very intentional about looking at that data. I do think that all the studies and things that we have learned about from other organizations and from the industry in general are very helpful, but it's so critical to look at our own organization, our own team, and looking at those metrics and really identifying where we have gaps, where we have opportunities to influence change and make an impact in helping women continue to grow. So I feel like it's very measurable, especially when you connect it directly with the business outcomes that you're trying to drive.
Apologies, I was having trouble unmuting here. So Diana, if you wouldn't mind continuing on that thought that there are many positive impacts of having women in the organization. What do you think are some of the most significant barriers to female leadership?
I think I see this in two critical aspects. I look first at the personal, the individual aspect of this. And I think many here would agree, at least many women here will agree, that we tend to live a lot in our heads, right? And we tend to overthink a lot, and we tend to put a lot of very high expectations of ourselves in every aspect of our lives. And in my journey as a woman leader, I have found that the biggest barrier to accomplishing what I want to accomplish personally and professionally is my mindset, is the mindset that I assume in front of the different things that I'm trying to accomplish. And I have seen this with many women in my life, personal and professional. So I think the first aspect that we always need to nurture, look at, try to impact is that mindset element, which is, if we don't start with the individual, there's absolutely nothing we can impact outside of ourselves. And I'm going to quote again this fabulous leader of mine, Tim Lowe. He always tells me the hardest person to lead is yourself. And if you don't invest enough to get to know yourself, to understand your own barriers, it's impossible for you to make a sustainable impact on other people. So I feel like that mindset element is so critical to eliminating those barriers for growth. And then I think there are more systemic issues, right? That second element, systemic issues, organizational issues. And to me, the two elements within that are so critical for organizations to do. The first one is to recognize, to really become aware of the limitations, right? We see so many leaders that just kind of, check this off the list as another topic they have to talk about, but they don't truly invest in understanding what the actual issue is. And I think both women and men leaders need to go through that exercise. Because another thing that I've seen in my career is that as women, sometimes when we overcome certain limitations, we become a little bit blind to those limitations for people that are coming behind us. So both men and women have to become extremely curious. They have to become extremely passionate about understanding the root cause of the issues and having conversations that allow them to learn from the experience of others. And then the second piece within the organizational element that I think is so critical to address is what happens outside of the organization. If we don't have conversations about what happens in our family lives, what's missing in our family relationships, how we manage our household, the things that happen outside of work, if we don't bring some best practices and teach women how to manage that aspect of their lives more efficiently, I don't think we're going to allow them to really blossom into what they can be organizationally, because they still have those barriers at home that are not letting them progress as fast as they could. And I don't think we talk about that enough in the organization. We talk a lot about what happens at work for women, but sometimes we don't really pay attention to what's happening outside of the office. And that's what I love what Eva was mentioning about her approach to that support for men and women, because all of that has such a tremendous impact on what you can accomplish at work. So that's my perspective on that.
Thank you. And Ashley, what are your thoughts about barriers to female leadership?
Yes, and just to add on to some of the great things Diana has shared, I think where I've had fortunate opportunities as I step back further in terms of my journey was the things that where others may not have the same fortunate opportunities, and that comes in childhood lessons. So, have females as young girls had the opportunity to have childhood lessons and early exposures to leadership opportunities. Have you had biases that have gotten in the way as a barrier just from either your gender, race, sexual orientation, disability, or any other aspect of their identity that has been a challenge as a female or a male to come through those and overcome them, and have people along that journey who have supported you. So there's always the industry norms. Diana mentioned some of those systemic pieces. Once you're in the industry, are you also going to have the opportunity to have early identification of your leadership potential? Because as a female, early on, you need to have that identification. We need, as leaders, to identify other females that we want to help and grow and develop, because lack of access to leadership development, lack of support to gain confidence, not having the positive role models, the mentors, the sponsors, it makes it harder as a barrier for that growth and development. And so much of that comes from connections and relationship building. So I've been so fortunate through the CEOs that I've had the privilege to work under to have those barriers removed by giving access to those pieces. So where I've had the fortunate opportunity, I need to pay it forward and make sure my female leaders, the young developing professionals, have those opportunities. And as we see those high potentials, nurturing and fostering them for success to help them live out to be their best. I think that's so critical. And not to underestimate, one of the pieces Diana said is life. And females having to juggle the reality of the personal and professional priorities, and having leaders, male or female, that you work with that have empathy for the life, and just to have acknowledgement of what that does to just our everyday being our best.
So each of you, thank you for sharing, giving examples of these barriers. Each of you have personally overcome or continue to overcome these barriers. How have you built confidence and or resilience over the course of your career? And we'll start with Ashley, and please feel free for each of you to just build on to each other's answers. You don't have to wait for me to call your name if you have something you want to build on.
Okay. And
I just, with that invitation, can I just go back and add one more thing to the comments before? I think another barrier is the unawareness of opportunity. And I'm thinking of STEM with girls. And how do we open up more career possibilities using or validating women's unique approach to things, and show girls that it's okay to be an engineer or a biologist or a technologist, and not just the traditional roles of marketing, HR, sales in some cases. So I think that's really important for us from the very early days of childhood to create role models and allow girls to see that they don't just have to be in traditional roles. They can be an executive or in a non-traditional STEM role. Thanks for letting me interrupt.
Eva, that was excellent. Could not agree more. So going back to Norma's question on building confidence and resilience, it is a journey. It is an ongoing journey of a growth mindset for sure. I give myself grace, and I ask others to give me grace. It is a frequent word used at a legacy in terms of let's provide that grace to one another. I think COVID opened up a lot of recognition of where we have to have grace, working through some significant challenges that none of us had ever faced before. The other piece I've done and gotten more comfortable with, but still have room to grow, is asking for help. I think sometimes as a younger female professional, you want to do it and show you can do it and do it to your best ability. And over time, I have much better when I ask for help and have that comfort to do so. I've grown with feedback. So obviously being open, receptive to that feedback, and giving myself the right to fail. So with grace, it's that right to fail, but failing forward. Leaning in and learning from others. But my ultimate objective is, if I fail, I don't want to fail others. So I might fail myself and I might have to fall forward and pick myself up, but I do not want to fail my team, my members, my communities that I serve, So really a lot of it comes with, there is adversity. You have to overcome it as a female leader, or any type of difference you may experience, but you have to overcome that adversity. You do it with courage. You embrace honesty and transparency and ultimately some resilience. And that comes through developing habits and practices, because it doesn't come with one repetition, it comes over time.
I guess I'll jump in. I think for me, the thing that helped me transform the way in which I looked at failure, or those difficult moments in your career, was the growth mindset, right? And starting to look at every situation in your life as an opportunity to learn, right? So I put in my head, when I started reading about growth mindset, that okay, if I go into this meeting and something goes terribly wrong, I will learn something from it, right? So from the beginning, you're anticipating that even if you fail, there's something good that is going to come out of that failure. And I think we can all agree that we always maximize the learning when we're going through something difficult, not when we're winning and, celebrating, right? So I also learned to accept the uncomfortable, right? And I think that has been a theme through my life, both personally and professionally. It's so easy to say, okay, I want to avoid this because it feels awkward or it feels uncomfortable, and we go to the next thing. But when we learn to just sit with that uncomfortable feeling and try to understand why we're feeling that way, reflecting on it, that's when the learning happens, which takes a little bit of vulnerability as well, right? So I've been very blessed with the fact that I am a very open person, and some people here on the call could attest to this. So I tend to share what is going on with me, both professionally and personally. And I just share those feelings, those experiences, and I have been, again, blessed with many, many great leaders and support people in my life that help me see the positive in those negative situations. So I think when you're able to really push through that uncomfortable feeling, that feeling low, feeling that you disappointed your team or yourself or your family or whatever the situation is, when you're able to push through that feeling and get to the other side, I think that's where the biggest learnings come from. And when you do that 1, 2, 3, 4 times, however many times you're faced with, then it becomes easier to be patient with yourself and go through that stage or that season in your journey to get to the other side that is going to take you to the next level. So I feel like just being vulnerable and reaching out to people that can help you through that process and trusting that you're learning through that process, it has been what has kept me going, even when I don't want to keep going. So.
Yeah, I coming at it from the entrepreneurial side, where you are constantly faced with challenges, and you make a lot of mistakes, especially as you're growing, and experience gives you confidence. I think making mistakes gives you confidence because you've been able to see your way through it. I think surrounding yourself with people who can validate your success, people that you can feed off of their energy and wanting to accomplish, focusing on the goals versus the failures, and realizing that there are going to be failures, but the important thing is how you accomplish that. I had a situation with an employee once who, I look back on it still and cringe. We were developing a database for a very large, well-known company for one of their C-level people. And one of my employees decided to take it and try and sell it to another company in our sphere of business. And I had to call the client and explain to him what was happening. And a friend of mine had said to me, he said, "It's not going to be you're not going to be judged by what happened. You're going to be judged by how you handled it." And I had to call that gentleman and say, "We've had a personnel problem. I'm so sorry. I'm dealing with it. This is how I'm dealing with it." He turned around and he said to me, "You know what, Eva? You tell me what you need to make this right. If you need more time, we'll work on that. And I'll make sure that guy never works in this town again." So it was a big, it is not exact, it was not at all how I expected it to go. But again, it's opening those doors, whether it may be a painful door. You sometimes get the feedback that you didn't expect, which gives you a whole new way of thinking about things and a whole new level of confidence. So in closing, also, I agree with everything that Ashley and Diana said.
Thank you. So when I hear that leadership requires a growth mindset, it just reminds me that leadership really is a journey. And so I'd like to take you back again to your early career and ask you how you navigated power structures early in your career versus the present, somewhat later in your career.
I can jump on that one. I think I always was sensitive to what my leaders' goals were, and I have a real team-minded way of approaching things, and I wanted to make sure that they were successful. The organization was successful, which meant my peers would be successful. So I also look for opportunities to jump on a new project or innovate a process that was already established. I tell future employees or people that are interviewing or people that I'm mentoring is always look for the opportunities to create value. You want to create value for your organization. You don't want to be there and complete every task as assigned and then clock out and consider that's the end of it. It's really looking at the organization, looking at your own little ecosystem and figuring out where you can add value. I think also being in not just a work environment, but also in a volunteer environment or in a family environment. How do you add value to something?
And I can add there as well. So joining an executive management team 15 years ago, I was by far the youngest on the team and one of two females. And so walking into that power element in terms of recognizing where I was in life and where I was as a female was I had self-awareness, but I didn't also understand what that would translate to from the power elements of it. My joy might have been challenged. My optimism and outlook might have been challenged at times, naivety to life or what I hadn't already experienced. So I embraced mentors. I embraced allies who could help me see what I didn't know and what I needed to be more attentive to, as well as not changing who I was in terms of being an optimist and a joyful person, and allowing that joy just to translate to not overshadow the business goals and getting the job done, but using that, empowering that passion through in terms of the passion, the purpose for what we do. But that requires an active investment. So what you have to do now is I have to pay it forward again, an active investment on other high-performing women who have that capacity and inclination to lead, and give them confidence that they can do it. And even if somebody else doesn't want to embrace their joy or their passion for what they're doing, the way that they're doing it is help them see how to channel it and use it for good, to really help them treat that leadership skill as a tangible skill that they can build upon and embrace, as we talked about, the growth mindset of learning and using that continuous learning to be better at what you're doing. It comes with relationships and networking, and that later in your career, you see so much power to the relationships and what that does inside and outside of your organization. Those networks can be the greatest thing ever when you're needing someone to lean upon based upon their strengths and their experiences. And ultimately, it's just charting a path. And so making sure you have that path and you have people who are supporting you along the way.
I think for me, the power, struggles or that element of power at the beginning of my career, I simply wasn't managing it. I was just getting frustrated and taking lots of things personal when I shouldn't have. And I was trying to, especially in my first role managing a large team, I was also having those power struggles with my own team, right? Because I was trying to demonstrate that as a Hispanic woman who was in my mid-20s and I had a big role in front of me, I had to demonstrate that I was capable. So many times when those power struggles came, I wasn't prepared to handle them. And I got mad and I felt attacked and I felt like I wasn't being recognized. So I made all of these mistakes many times. And it took a lot of self-reflection, but also mentorship and conversations with people that had been there before, who slowly started to teach me it's not always about you. It's not always about something you said or something you did or something you didn't do. Sometimes it's just about the problem that is in front of you. And if you cannot get past that, get past your own, kind of feelings about what you're doing in this situation and focus on what's in front of you and what you can actually manage and control, then you're going to continue to go down the frustration path versus the resolution path. So it took me a long time to get there, but now I feel like I'm a lot more prepared to first look at what that individual is bringing to the table from the perspective of what that person is trying to solve versus feeling it as a personal attack. And then second, focusing on what I can actually control in the situation. So if somebody is not allowing you to do something or it's blocking your way, what are things that you can actually control and focus on to, like Eva said, show the value that you bring to the situation, right? So it's a very long journey to get there, and I'm still on that journey. But I tend to now seek the advice from other people, seek to understand what's happening in the situation, and try to put myself in the shoes of that other individual. And that has been extremely, extremely productive for me when I pause and I try to think, okay, I'm perceiving this behavior as XYZ. Let me stop for a minute and try to think about what's triggering that behavior in that person. And when you start going through that exercise, most times you realize that it has nothing to do about you and a lot to do about what challenge they're facing. And it allows you to be not only kind of, have empathy for what that person is going through, but also share your own experience so that that person can come to the table with a different perspective. I went through that process recently in my career with my boss, who I now thank so much for so many of the learnings. But at the beginning, there was so much tension because I was taking many of the things that he was bringing to the table as an attack on my contribution or my performance. And when I switched my mindset into thinking about what we were trying to solve together and where he was coming from in the situations that were challenging for both of us, it completely changed our relationship and it became so much more productive from that point on. So I guess my big learning through that journey is being vulnerable, seeking advice from others that have been there before, and don't think it's all about yourself, but because many times it isn't about you. It's just about the situation that you're trying to solve together. So.
Well, thank you. We've heard throughout your comments, we've learned about factors that impact a woman's ability to lead others. Let's flip this a little bit, and perhaps you can give advice for men being led by female leaders. So what advice would you give to men?
I guess I'll jump in since I had the mic before, but really quickly, I think I mentioned this before. It's all about curiosity. It's sincerely wanting to understand the experience of the other person. And I have to call out my CEO here because he recently went through this process with a group of female leaders or women leaders in the organization. And he took the time to sit down and talk to us and learn about the situations that we face, not just at work, but also outside of work. So I think for men to be successful in supporting women leaders, they have to understand the challenges that they go through that they as men have not faced, right? And it has to go beyond what happens at the office. It has to go to what happens at home. When you leave, your office and go home, what is preventing you from doing what you want to do, right? And that curiosity and that asking the right questions across the organization, because you got to go through all the levels. You have to look at those people, those women that are in manager positions trying to become, you know, a director and so on and so forth. It's like really going deep into understanding their experience, knowing that they will never be able to 100% relate to it. So also be aware of that bias that might exist because they won't ever have the same experience. So I think curiosity and just being extremely intentional about how they learn about their female leader experiences will really give them the tools to do something about it.
I can add something in. I think acknowledging stereotypes and biases that we all have, and looking at women not with a preconceived bias that, again, you could think of STEM, that women don't do that, or women aren't hard enough as managers, or can't manage people. Just acknowledging that we all have a preconceived bias, putting that on the side and looking at women as equal contributors can make a difference.
And I'll add here, when I thought about this question, I thought about it through the lens of my male employees. I thought about through the lens of my male bosses, and I thought about through the lens of I asked a male counterpart. So I actually went to a peer and said, I want your opinion on this because different ways we all look at this. And so for my male employees, I just recognize we have named it. We think differently. And so we manage and process our emotions differently. I have one male employee who has a sizable downline of females. And so allowing him to have the conversations about what that means and how their emotions may respond to different things, how their life impacts are an element in it, helping us figure out, and it's not that he's not tuning out emotions, but he's just processing on to get to the problem solving. And sometimes his female employees don't want him to problem solve yet. They just want to be heard. And so managing through what that means to be heard. From a male boss standpoint, what I received as a female being led is the mutual respect and that desire to see me succeed no matter male or female. So just mentoring me to be my best at who I am. And then when I asked my male counterparts, it was really some of the things Eva just said about being mindful of assumptions and stereotypes, and just to be open to the different perspectives and way of thinking, and just recognizing that sometimes as females, we see the power of relationship building and those conversations, and sometimes more on the personal level than a male may, but it's important that we're all open to all of that because it's important to what helps drive somebody to be their best. So it was a really neat thought process for me to think through. We have to think about it not just being female leaders leading men, but also how the men feel about us, and then how our peers feel about us as teammates too.
Those are great points. Thank you. Well, I have been doing all of the asking. I'd love to open it up to the group and see if any participants have questions for our panel. Oh, we have a hand up. Shanna.
Good afternoon. I am really interested in your perspectives from a home standpoint. There are so many articles lately talking about the emotional burden and the emotional load that women carry when they are leaders at work and they come home and they want to have a partnership, not a leadership dynamic within the home. I'm interested in your perspectives and any advice you can give to all of us who are struggling with that emotional load.
Okay, I'll jump in. I'm very passionate about this topic. I think I mentioned it a couple times. I think those pressures at home and those the mental load, the emotional load, all of those things have such a big impact on your career and how you can grow. I don't know that I can give any advice. I think that the biggest thing that I can say is if you don't address it and if you don't talk about it and if you don't make it an active element of how you manage your life at home and personally, it will catch up with you, right? And it will cause crisis in your home. It will cause crisis for your kids, and it will prevent you from continuing to advance in your career. I would say be very vulnerable and very open about those issues with the people that you trust. I have had extremely very supportive leaders that have helped me through that process, both men and women leaders that have taken the time to have a conversation with me about my struggles at home so that I can better integrate that with my life. One of your questions in the things that we were preparing to talk about talked about work and life balance. There's no such thing, in my opinion. I think you can aspire to have an integration and a better harmony between those worlds. But if you're not able to be open about what's happening at home, you know, obviously within reason, but being able to talk about it with the people that you trust, with the people that are responsible for supporting you in the workplace, it is very hard to manage that load on your own and be effective both at home and in the workplace. And that's why I say that if we don't have those conversations at work, our female leaders are not going to be prepared to have those conversations at home either, right? Or be open about it with their boss and get the support that they need to get through those challenges. And obviously, not to get here super personal, but obviously you have to have those conversations with your partner, and that has to be in the same way. I have found this to be very effective, in the same way that we think about quarterly objectives and QBRs with our customers and performance reviews. You almost have to go through a similar process at home, where you set the objectives for the year with your partner and you review every month and every quarter how things are progressing, what things do you need to adjust in your home environment to allow both individuals to grow at work. So I think that same intentionality that we take to planning our year and having objectives and meeting those objectives and giving each other performance reviews, if you apply some of that learning that you get from your work life into your personal life, I think you'll start to see that some of those challenges that you're facing become a little bit easier to handle, because the other person is also going to understand them better and you're going to understand theirs as well. So that would be
also,
my thought there.
Yes, sorry. I would also add in, just be gentle with yourself. Things don't have to be perfect. And I know from working with a lot of very intelligent, high energy women, that where they start stumbling is in trying to be everything to everyone. And sometimes it's just not possible, and that's okay. The other thing I would say is allowing yourself to take advantage, and it goes back to an earlier comment about asking for help, but looking for outside resources and not being afraid to reach out and say to someone, can you pick up my kid from school? Or can you pick up my child from a doctor's appointment? I think a lot of times we are just so reluctant to ask for help, and we're in this mindset that is unattainable, that is that we have to be perfect. And everybody looks at us, and it goes back to also comments that were said earlier about trying to be perfect and not wanting to fail. So I think just being gentle with yourself. And I agree with the comment about there is no balance. It is an integration, and it's a constant struggle. I think all of us hesitated to answer the question initially because it's a challenge.
Thank you. I do want to point out in the chat, Julie has provided a book that she recommends. And I think we had one final question. If we can try to answer it in one question before I turn it back over to Stacy. If you could go back to the beginning of your leadership journey, what's the one piece of advice, if you can just, a little snippet that you would tell your younger self?
Not be afraid to fail.
Okay, Ashley?
Give yourself grace.
And Diana?
Take care of yourself so you can be your better self for other people.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's been just a privilege to learn from you, and I will turn it over to Stacy. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, Ashley, Eva, Diana, and Norma for moderating. Thanks so much for your honesty. I feel really inspired right now. We'd also like to thank the Legacy Center for Leadership and Character. They sponsored this workshop, and we really appreciate Lynn and Pat and team putting this together. We also appreciate our allies on the call. This was not an event just for women. Men, we loved having you here. Thanks so much. And we look forward to the next program we offer in the near future. Have a great day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you. Take care.